Next up on the stand, after Cassie's mom stepped down, a man who goes by the name, wait for it, The Punisher. The Punisher is an exotic dancer and former sex worker whose real name is Sharay Hayes. Mr. Hayes told the jury that he got his nickname playing basketball, but his photos, they seem to tell a different story for why he may be using that name today. Ooh, kind of safe for work, almost not safe for work. I wouldn't put it up at work, but that's the Punisher, y'all. Mr. Punisher testified that he was hired by Diddy and Cassie for 8 to 12 different times, things like episodes. And he was meant to create a sexy scene that would last for hours. He said that Diddy called all the shots in these episodes. He didn't call them freak-offs, but he described what we've heard as freak-offs. He never saw any cameras, he said. He didn't see any violence. And he said, although Cassie would sometimes wince or sigh at some of the sex directions that came from Diddy, he said it didn't seem as though Cassie was there against her will. Again, this is a prosecution witness, so that's kind of, that's on the fence there. He does certainly corroborate the freak-offs and what happened in the freak-offs, but that whole business about, to him, he wasn't sure if Cassie was into it or not, but he did hear that she winced and that she sighed as Diddy gave a lot of those directions. By the way, the Punisher also said that he never saw Diddy take drugs, never saw that he seemed drunk or high, which is exactly what prosecutors are trying to show, that this was not just an out-of-control, party of an enlisted megastar, but instead was a clear-eyed criminal enterprise. And I mentioned it off the top of the show, so I'm happy now to introduce the man who spent the better part of today on the witness stand. Sharay, the Punisher Hayes, joins me now live. Mr. Hayes, it's really good of you to be here. Thank you so much for doing this. I can imagine you've had a hell of a day.
Definitely a challenging day today.
So tell me a little bit about it. Like, how was it? How'd you feel up there? Like, give me a summary and a description of what that day was like for you.
Well, it's very nerve-wracking. There's nothing you can do to really prepare yourself for that type of environment. Very tense scenario, very serious atmosphere, and I just kept a mind frame of from the time I've been contacted by investigators. It's just give my version of the truth, what I can remember to the best of my ability, and that's what I tried to do today.
So I know that you talked about this on the stand, but I want to just sort of flesh it out with you a little, because we get court sketches. There's no cameras in court, so it's really good to have you in person. When you say that it was clear that Diddy was directing the sex scenes and the sex acts, because as you described, it started off as just a sexy scene, but it progressed into actual sex over the course of the freak-offs. What kind of direction did you get the sense? Like aggressive, mean, demanding, or just, hey, this is kinky, let's do this?
Not even as I described in the text. They were very subtle. Mr. Combs was always basically across the room, and it would be in a low tone, and it would just be suggestive. It was nothing aggressive, nothing that would create some sort of scenario that this was like unnatural between them. Obviously, a sexual scenario with a couple is not the norm, but it's something that I had heard about before, and there's some couples that get into this. And in hindsight, if there were no accusations, I would have saw it as completely natural.
Can you repeat that? You would have seen it as what?
If there was no accusations, like in hindsight, all this stuff is in hindsight. Like in the moment, I didn't see it as anything but a couple doing something risque, and Cassie as a partner trying to create a fantasy for who I believed was her husband, and for the majority of this.
So at one point in your testimony, I think you mentioned, and I was just reading transcript because, of course, there's no cameras, you mentioned that Sean Combs was slightly aggressive in his tone and that Cassie would sigh or wince at some of his direction. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yeah, I understand that you're getting it in parts. It was quite a long testimony. When the sighing and the wincing was associated with, some of the direction was very specific, and it could be one after the other in terms of Move the candle to the left, move it a little more, move it a little more, and now move your body a little more, stuff like that. And it was kind of unnatural for a scenario where you're trying to create a sexual situation. So my understanding or my interpretation of it in the moment was frustration with the repeated directions.
So it felt to you when you were there like it was frustration, but it did not feel to you when you were there like she did not want to be in the situation she was in with you.
It did not.
The other question I have for you is, I think I read that this began in was it right, 2012, that the first time you were hired?
That's correct.
So that would seem fairly early on, perhaps in the free cops in their relationship. And it felt to me like in the beginning, you did not actually have any kind of sex with Cassie in front of Diddy in those hotel rooms. It was just performative, but that it graduated in the later free cops to sexual acts. Did it seem to you, now that you're hearing a lot more of the story, that this was the beginning of the whole freak off adventure for them, that they were kind of figuring it out themselves as well, and that maybe it progressed a lot further and got a lot less appealing to Cassie, maybe later after you had moved on and weren't in the picture?
So I'm instructed to not necessarily follow any of the details. So I just really know what my interaction with was. And it was always like almost a start over scenario, because like I said in my testimony, it wasn't consistent. Like I would get called maybe once every 4 months, so long periods of time would go in between. So it would definitely be kind of like an odd situation, but not in a way where I can assess. There was some sort of progression that went on from the time we started to the time we ended. It was pretty consistent all the way through.
Well, may I commend you in following the orders of the court and not having consumed a lot of information about this before your testimony, because that would have been an easy question for you to answer had you known all the background, right, that we're all learning in court. So congratulations and good for you. You're a model witness, and I appreciate you doing that. That's true justice. I do want to press a little bit on this aspect of from the first free cough until the last free cough that you did. Did you sense that they were getting more practiced at it, and that it was a lot more sexual right away? First it was performative and just, a show, and then it became actual sex towards the end. Was there anything different between episode 1 and say episode, maybe maximum 12? That seems to be the max number that you performed with them. Did 12 seem a lot more, like it was a machine that was ready to go?
Actually, the opposite. It was very routine, like a very consistent routine. It always started the same, some sort of a scenario where we would be across from each other on couches that were covered with sheets. It always had to start with a baby oil, with me rubbing it on myself, her doing the same, escalating to us rubbing each other, and then escalating into small sex acts leading into actual penetration. Is very methodical and pretty much the same. I can't say there was a different energy from start to finish. It pretty much stayed the course of whatever the criteria was from the first time going forward. And the first time was actually the only time there was an actual sexual interaction. And it was offered, as I said in my testimony, but I declined.
So one of the other escorts who had done some of the same things in these free cops that you were hired for said that at one point, Sean Combs was very violent with Cassie, and that he took her in the other room, and that he heard slapping and beating, and that when they came out, Diddy wanted them to continue and finish strong. That was his words, apparently, allegedly, finish strong. But that the male escort couldn't. He said, I had erectile dysfunction at that point because of what I'd gone through. And I know, like, you wrote a whole book called In Search of Freezer Meat about that, about erectile dysfunction and how difficult it can be. And I think you might have mentioned that it actually happened to you during one of your free coughs with Diddy and Cassie, that you had the same kind of issue. Was it at all based on violence or aggression?
No, it was not. It was not based on violence and aggression. I think for me, it was there was no true, at times, for me, I could not get into a place of intimate connection. There was always a discomfort with obviously a male partner just being present, period. And then, like I said, with the direction, the move to the left, the move to the right, to do this, to do that, in terms of me maintaining like an erotic space of being turned on or whatever, it was difficult. So it was just more of, it felt like acting opposed to a actual natural sexual scenario.
Did you ever know another escort by the name of Jules in LA?
The truth of the matter is, I was in a naive state. My very first interaction, I was told it was, she went by Janet. I had no idea who they were. And she introduced herself as Janet and said this was her birthday and this was something special her and her husband was doing. So the majority of the time, actually the entire time, even when I found out who they were initially, I really believed I was the only guy they were involved with. I thought this was some.
But had you ever heard of had you ever heard of an escort named Jules?
I have not. I'm not in the male escort business. I'm actually a stripper that took a proposition, but is not somebody I would commingle with in terms of interactions.
And then last quick question, sir. Did they offer you, did the feds offer you immunity at all at any step of the way as they were, prepping you to be a witness for this trial?
No, there was no talk of immunity of anything. From what I understood, I was not charged with any crime or there was any issue where I would need immunity in regards to this matter.
Sharay Hayes, I can't thank you enough for being so forthcoming and candid and agreeing to talk to me on this program tonight. I really appreciate it. I also appreciate you walking into federal court and getting up on a witness stand and talking about stuff that's pretty uncomfortable. The justice system relies on witnesses being fair and truthful and doing what you did, no matter how hard it is, and it is real hard. So thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. I appreciate you having me, and thank you so much.
Can I ask you one quick question? Do you think
Sure.
Do you think Sean Combs is guilty of sex trafficking and the crimes that he's actually accused of and racketeering?
I mean, again, like I said, I really, this has been a high place of anxiety for me. So it wasn't just being a good witness and follow directions. I really avoid the details. I think the totality of the situation for everybody involved is just extremely sad and difficult and just a black eye experience on everybody involved. And I just think it's unfortunate. I don't have the legal understanding to levy the evidence and come to a determination of what I think or don't think. I just think it's an unfortunate situation for everyone.
Well, I am super appreciative. Thank you again, Sharay Hayes.
Anytime. Have a good day.
Okay. You too. And I just want to tell our viewers as well before we move on that we did reach out to Sean Combs' attorneys today. We requested a statement from them, but we have not heard back. Understandable, they are in trial. It's the busiest time for a lawyer.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.